thank everybody for coming to a special call meeting of the city of South Fulton to talk about three items that were time sensitive that must be taken care of by before the first of the month. At this time, would you please call the roll, Ms. Miller?
Mayor William Bill Edwards here. Mayor Pro Tem Mark Baker. Councilmember Catherine Rowell.
Present.
Councilmember Carmelita Jones.
Present.
Councilmember Helen Z. Willis.
Present.
Councilmember Naima Gilliard.
Here.
Councilmember Rosie Jackson.
Here.
Councilmember Goody. Mr. Mayor, you have a quorum.
Okay, would you sound the first item? I think all of these items have had this is their second reading and eligible for vote. So would you call this first item?
An ordinance to amend Title 11 Parks and Recreation of the City of South Fulton Code of Ordinances to establish park rules and regulations and for other lawful purposes. This item is co-sponsored by Council Members Rowell and Willis, and it is for second reading.
I'll entertain a motion if necessary.
I make a motion to approve ordinance 2018-025 parking rate. Second.
Properly moved to second. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? That passes. Next. Unanimous.
Mayor, I have one additional parks item. I was contacted by the attorney for Fulton County today, and he said that the closing documentation for the park conveyances is ready. They would like to close on the 31st, which is before the next meeting. I can give them two responses. I can say that the council approved for us to close the documents today, or I can tell them that the council would like to review the documents and we can't close until the 5th.
Mr. Manager, you want to?
So I believe that they're fairly general documents. I think that the attorney is working with theirs to close them out. And so if you guys approved it and just authorized us to complete the administrative process, I don't see any issue with that. And I think we've, kind of conferred throughout this process and we're on track.
Are you talking about adding an agenda item now?
Adding an agenda item for the 5th?
No, you just told me that you adding an agenda item?
No, well, it's part of your parks discussion, so you can discuss that within the realm of parks.
But I'm confused.
Well, I think you would have to authorize us to move forward.
Correct, so you would have to have a second motion relating to parks, and that motion would be to authorize the mayor or the city manager.
Can we just amend that motion to include that?
Yes.
You can.
The motion,
You already have a vote.
yeah. Okay, let's make it, let me tell you something. This is a simple agenda. And no one ever said anything to me about anything else. So we can, if you like, someone can make a motion for that. I'd like for somebody to restate, the attorney can restate the motion. Hello?
The motion would be for the city council I move to approve for the mayor or the city manager to sign off on the park conveyance agreements.
Well, I think to be fair, she said she has to have this information.
Yeah, he emailed me like 45 minutes ago, just saying that the documents were complete. If you want to convey them this month, we can set a closing for the 31st.
Okay, let me start off. Let me give Ms. Williams, go ahead. Your time is up.
No, I'm waiting until she's conversing with the city manager.
Your time.
No, you can't do that. Oh, she's conversing with the city manager.
What's that?
No, we can transition park to the park.
I think they're waiting on you all.
I'm sorry, we were just conferring to get you the information that you need. So I think we just got this information today. If council, and I think, you guys have discussed that sometimes you want to review this information and know what you're approving. I think what we've just discussed is, one, you could authorize us today to just move forward and complete the closing, and you would just be authorizing us. Or secondly, on the June 5th agenda, you could also leave it until then. We can transition parks, and you can receive the information as a part of your regularly scheduled June 5th meeting. So you could do either or, but I think what the attorney was attempting to do is that she received the information today, the documents are available a little bit early, and so it might allow us some administrative efficiencies if we approve it. Either or is up to the council, and I think we're fine either way.
Okay, I'll yield to you.
Okay. Do I motion to do
Right.
Okay. So I'm confused. Can you all explain to me what these documents are? Because you said it's a general document, but that's not giving me much information. What are the documents? What do they do? Can you tell me? Because I haven't seen the document. I'm just very uncomfortable with making a motion to approve something that I haven't had an opportunity to review.
And that's a legitimate concern, a very legitimate concern. So these documents are going to be generated pursuant to a Georgia statute that says once you incorporate, the county has to transfer its park facilities, property, XYZ, all sorts of items related to parks upon the city's request. We have requested that the county transfer these documents pursuant to our transition this month. So the county has tried to get these documents prepared for our review this month. So that's the only urgency. They thought that we would want to transition ownership this month. So basically what the statute says is that they cannot charge us more than $100 per acre for these properties. And that 100 per acre includes any recreation centers, swimming pools, basketball courts, anything else that would be within the vicinity of these parks. They have told me today, 45 minutes ago, that they have completed these documents pursuant to the statute and that they're ready for review and that we can have these properties if we want them this month. So my response to them either needs to be, it's not a sense of urgency, we can delay this until the June 5th meeting, or if you want to transition these documents, you can give the mayor and the city manager the authority to sign off before June 5th.
So can they be delayed until the June 5th meeting to give us an opportunity to review the documents?
Absolutely.
Or is that the city manager's function to review the documents?
So legally, we can delay. I plan to review anything that's inconsistent with the statute. I wouldn't allow them, or I wouldn't move forward with the closing if I saw something inconsistent. I don't know if there's an administrative reason why you would want to pursue it this month. The city manager may.
I think we're fine. Yeah.
I just didn't want to push back the closing without getting authorization from you that I can do that, since it's currently set for the 31st.
Okay, thank you.
I guess my question, can we rescind then this motion? But
I'm sure we can, but what I'm hearing is that it doesn't really make, a lot of us haven't seen the documentation, it doesn't make any difference, like you said, at our next meeting.
Yeah, and I see everybody concerned about it.
Yes.
And raising whatever, so if you have that much concern versus talking about it, let's rescind that motion. Look at the documents when we get it, and then we can vote.
And you don't necessarily
I see a
have
lot
to
of talk up
rescind.
here going on.
You don't have to rescind, you can just move, say, we authorize the attorney to push closing to after.
Then
our
I say, they're talking, so we need to probably rescind it because they were not notified.
Yeah, these are completely
You're
separate.
not hearing me.
Okay,
They weren't notified, so there's a problem. So if there is a problem, let's rescind the motion until they have an opportunity to read it, and that will cut down all talk and
you have that
conversation.
option too, you can rescind it.
Councilmember Jackson, the current motion does not include the request from the attorney. So if they would like to,
But we have talk up here.
yes, but not about the current motion. I think what the concern is whether they continue with the current motion that is just for the second reading for parks. What the attorney brought today is saying that she received additional information that we actually have the closing documents a little earlier than we thought. And so her request is to make sure that if the council is willing, then we can add that to a new motion or to the current. So if there is conversation or concern, we would keep the current motion, the council would move forward and vote on it, and then address the closing at a separate time.
Right.
Okay, so everybody understands that, so we can cut that conversation. No, I'm not saying necessarily yours, I'm just saying instead of talking about the fact that they're just hearing this.
Okay.
Are you finished, Ms. Jackson?
Yes.
Okay, Ms. Gurria.
What is the impact if we don't do it today and we wait until the 5th?
There's not a financial impact that I'm aware of, and there's not an impact other than you won't become owners of the park facilities that you're responsible for until June. Now, do I think administratively, I don't foresee any administrative issue with that. Like ideally, you would transfer Parks and Recreation, and then it would become your property too. So you would try to tie that transfer as close to the transition as possible. If we push it back another 2 weeks, I don't see a significant burden.
So in other words, it is what it is. It's a number of parks. It's at a cost based on state statute, and it's something that we are going to transition, whether we do it today or 2 years from now, right?
Yes, I think there is we want to, I guess, talk about this a little bit differently. So the hope would have been that we would have gotten these closing documents a little bit earlier than today. Legal activities take a little longer than normal, but this is no different than the fire and police portions, where the transition activities start on the day that you transition, but sometimes administratively it takes longer. I think what the attorney is kind of helping us do today is that if they have the documents ready and you guys authorize us to move forward, then we don't have to come back to you. We can go ahead and close out all of our assets. I think the other reason why Fulton County probably pushed on her today is because if they transition these, if they do not transition these land assets and our physical assets, equipment and otherwise, then they take on responsibility past the date of transition. And so this will allow us to take on the full responsibility and, just to be honest, get our assets earlier, which is why I said, I think although you guys haven't seen the documents, I am not certain you've been intricately involved in this other than authorizing us administratively to move forward.
With that being said, it seems like it's the action that we probably could take, but I do want to know from a fiscal standpoint, based on statutory sales amounts, how much are we talking about in terms of the transfer of assets from the parks?
It's approximate, it's a little under 120,000, I believe. So that includes all of the land, assets, and other equipment, everything, so.
Are we clear that we've gotten all the land relative to Parks and Rec?
So that would be coordinated during the closing process, but I'll tell you, we had a meeting with Fulton County today. We've actually met with them on 6 occasions over the last probably less than 30 days. So we're fairly certain that we have everything we need. We've also, I won't get into all the nitty gritty, but we've actually even negotiated some, I guess, temporary lease things for anything that there are some issues with. So we are very confident that we're transitioning all of the assets that belong to us.
So one follow-up question. With that being said, would it be, in your opinion, acceptable if we took action to authorize up to a certain amount to authorize the transfer of assets from Parks and Rec so that you could proceed and line it up with the transfer to the department?
So the budget portion you have actually already approved through your, because you've already budgeted for Parks and Recs and it was included in the modification. So the amount I think is fine, is actually just the authorization to close.
Okay.
And to the extent that there's property out there, because I think your concern is, do we have everything that we're entitled to? And to the extent that there's something additional, this doesn't prevent us from sending a notice saying, look, you left out this property, convey it over.
Okay.
Like, I think there might be some art centers. I don't know if, have you resolved that with Fulton County?
So so the process with the art centers, we're focusing on parks right now. I think the definition of what the art centers are, if there are any additional parcels, We have kind of worked out and identified what those are, but right now we are specifically transitioning parks. And so it does not prohibit us from, let's say there was an art center that we believe is a part of our city, to address it at a later time. This actually just transition everything that meets the definition of a park or a parcel that we are requesting that is a part of a park.
And again, last, thank you for that clarification. Even if we don't see it, I think it would be helpful for us to understand what assets we did buy, and having the council aware of that information would be helpful to me.
Absolutely, and we can make sure, like we did the work session before, I know we listed all of those things, but we can provide an update once it closes, similar to parks and, police and fire.
Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Guns?
I think Councilwoman Rowell took all my questions, but pretty much when will the documents be available? I'm assuming the closing documents.
He has, the attorney indicated to me that he's just finalizing and he's going to get them to me in sufficient time to where I can review before the 31st, if we still want to close that date. So I'm anticipating within the next week.
So within the next week, the council will be able to review this comprehensive list of our assets and what we're supposed to be receiving, correct?
Correct.
Okay, Mr. Willis, this is second, Joanne.
Yes, I understand. Just for clarification, what we just passed was the ordinance, which is the policies on how to operate administratively. And what we're talking about is closing. It's just like a house. Whenever you purchase a house, you have closing. And so that's pretty much what we're doing with the parks. We're transitioning parks. So we have to close, and we have to account for our assets and close out the transaction, because the county has been providing a service to our city temporarily until the transition is complete. What I would like to say is, going forward, for any other transition that we do have to make to the city from the county, I would like a more timely closeout, because we're 7 days out from the 28th, which is when we're supposed to transition parks, we're supposed to transition parks by the 28th. So I would like to see a more timely closeout, not last minute stuff, because we went through last minute closeout items with other departments we transitioned over. And so I just don't like the last minute stuff.
So this isn't last minute. So what happens is you can't close until you transition. So this is actually early. So this is a kind of a blessing for us. So what we're asking for, you don't have, your meetings are every 2 weeks. And so the timing would be at the closing, but you don't have a meeting then. And so what has happened is Fulton County has moved forward and provided us this information early. The issue is that there is no meeting. So what the attorney is saying, instead of calling an additional meeting, or instead of us holding off while there's no issue, again, we've done the same thing with both fire and police. What has happened is, administratively, we've met with these folks 6, 7 times. That's why we know what assets we're getting, we know what challenges we have, but they literally, I guess, called her today and have said, hey, we actually are ready to close prior to the closing date. That actually hasn't happened in any of the previous transition, and I would kind of say that that's an administrative win for our staff who've been working pretty hard on this stuff. Secondly, again, it is separate from, I think you made a great point, it is definitely separate from the ordinance which allows us to operate, but it is by no means negative that we are able to close prior to the actual physical transition. I think that's a very good thing. If you notice, I think we got some kudos in the news recently that our police received all of their equipment and all of the things that we've been kind of working on well past the transition. This would be very similar, except for we would be prepared before the transition. And so while we don't like to add things, I tell you, I think I'm strongly against all of the late add-ons and things of this nature. This is a technical thing that the council doesn't normally touch, and we just need the ability to move forward and take advantage of being early for a change in what we've done in the past.
Okay, thank you for the clarification. Again, we still haven't gotten the asset list from police
We have it.
We, the council,
We can provide it.
can we, okay,
Yeah.
and,
So some of these things, I ain't gonna harp on being new for a while. I don't know how it's been done in the past, but we actually literally physically closed out, I believe on the date that you guys saw the interview with the mayor on TV. That literally just happened. And so we have our list and it's been closed out, signed all of the bill of sales, so we can provide that. I'm not sure in what fashion you have done it in the past, but what we can do moving forward is I'll provide you informational memo with all of the information attached. That's easy for us to do.
okay, because the last thing we heard was that you were still negotiating, and so
were.
that's why.
Mhm. We were.
Okay.
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am. We closed
So
it out.
We'll get assets, we'll get the information from parks and police.
So you'll get police first, because again, we have to close and it has to be
I
final on
understand.
parks.
Okay.
And then, no
Okay,
question.
thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, Ms. Brown.
I'd like to make the motion to authorize the city manager and city attorney to close on the parks assets by the end of May to align with the transition and to provide the city council of this with the assets that we've acquired through that process.
Second.
Properly moved to second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? That passes unanimously. Mr. Clerk?
The next item, also for second reading, is an ordinance amending the municipal court schedule and for other lawful purposes.
This is second reading on this ordinance. I entertain a motion.
I'd like to make a motion approving ordinance 2018-026, amending the municipal court schedule.
Second.
Been properly moved to second. Any discussion?
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
The question is about the court and it's related to the budget. So during the budget process, 100,000 was added to the budget for the court. And, excuse me. And I don't specifically know what the 100,000 is for. I went over the budget, all the positions, and looked at the original budget, and according to my calculation, with especially for the personnel line or salary line, there would be somewhere around $79,000 left based on the number of FTEs and the contractual, and I put the salaries and the contractual together. So with that amount of money left, I don't understand why they needed $100,000 more.
So the reason why we added out, again, that's second from this schedule, but this helps to inform it. So one, as you know, when you did the initial budget, there was no police and there was no fire or anything that contributed to additional, I guess, time and scheduling for the courts. I think it was operating on just 3 days. And so those costs are fixed, but they're under the professional services line. And so the $100,000 is added to that line for a variety of different reasons. One, you've had to expand the court schedule. Secondly, your judge is considered part-time, and so to fill judge and some others are considered part-time, and to fill the full-time court schedule, professional services will allow for that. And so that means contract judges. I think there's one easy example to highlight is that when a person or when a group of people are a part of the same crime, one public defender could not defend them all. So that's additional need for contract services. Additional court space, which I think you guys received some information at our last, at the Lunch and Learn about using Union City as well as the community court. So there are a variety of different costs associated with that, and that 100,000 of existing funds that were already in the budget were moved to ensure that there was enough funding to cover the additional costs related to the municipal courts. And so it was not already existent in the court line item, but we moved it from previous cost savings and allocated it to the court. And the reason for that was based on the new court schedule or expanded court schedule and responsibilities and the projected cost of those contracted services.
So one of my questions too was, where was the cost for the court coming from? Was it coming from that budget? Because I didn't see anything in the budget for that. So part of the $100 is for the court coming to pay for the rental of the space?
It's to cover anything under the professional services line item, which could include that. So that could be additional contracts. In naming, I think the public defender, that was just a low-hanging fruit example, but there are others like that where the additional required court services bring on additional costs that were not accounted for. And where did it come from? So I wasn't prepared for that question. That's kind of outside of what we prepared for today, because I think it may have been from personnel cost savings, and then it was reallocated during the budget amendment. But we could easily get back to you with an answer on that.
So my last question is, so do you think we'll need an additional judge since the hours have been expanded?
So yes, ma'am. And so you're in the charter and a previous resolution that you passed actually provides for that because of the part-time status of the current judge. Yes, ma'am.
Well, I have a quick question about this schedule. Is it for the fiscal year or is it through the end of the calendar?
So this schedule is permanent, and we are making it permanent because we don't know how long it's going to take to negotiate the contract with Fulton County. Previously, we've done the emergency for 30 days, and then we had to do another emergency for 30 days. So we said this time we're just going to make this permanent until we are able to reach an agreement on the community court. And at that point, the judge may wish to come back to you to ask for revision. She may not.
I would like to not have court on election day, which is a Tuesday, November 6th.
I don't.
Is the judge here? I mean, I can relay that to her.
Before the judge starts, isn't that a separate item? Isn't that separate?
They are. I think he's asking about just a general court session and if something can be done. But I would tell you that those things are kind of separate, and if you start to mess with people's ability to be seen by a judge, especially for criminal matters, I mean, that may impact their ability to vote long term anyway. So I'm not sure we should connect the two, especially today. But I'll definitely defer to the judge on that. Yeah, that's right.
Well, this is about the schedule, and people that disenfranchised from voting for felonies. We don't handle felony cases in our court, do we? So I just want to make sure that nobody can't go vote because they have to be in court. Because it's not like you just walk in and walk out.
I got you.
Well,
as it relates, first of all, good evening. As it relates to Tuesdays, I will tell you that generally our heavy day. So that will require, should that be the council's pleasure, that will require some extreme planning in advance. We have to do some communications with the police, things of that nature. As it relates to first appearance, I'm going to respectfully disagree and think that we need to have at least first appearance, because I think I've talked to you about my position of having people in jail longer than they have to be. And so if we don't have court on Tuesday, then that means that they won't be seen until Wednesday, and that's just kind of not my personal preference. But certainly if that's the council's pleasure, then that's the council's pleasure.
To make an exception for this one day, this far in advance, so that we can schedule for it, what would I need to make a motion? Like, what do I need to do?
Well, you can move to approve the ordinance with the exception that it shall include a provision that says that where possible, the court shall try to avoid scheduling court on state or federal election days, or are you just talking about state election days?
Just November 6th, yes, just our election.
But administratively, she could, if she wanted to, administratively.
Yeah, she can do it administratively within her authority, or you can do that by your vote.
I mean, I think if that's the general consensus of the body, then that's something certainly you can communicate to me. We have enough time now that we're not necessarily up against the gun. Police officers aren't writing tickets in November now. I will tell you that when we get towards the end of the summer, they will start hitting those October, November dates. So, you know, certainly if that's the consensus of the body, you would just need to communicate that to us. Just understanding the consequences of that, though. You know, understanding that somebody gets locked up or in jail Monday, anytime after, what time do we see them? 9:30, 10 o'clock in the morning on Mondays? And they will sit there till Wednesday. Now, if everybody is comfortable with that, then that's certainly the pleasure of the council.
Well, I would like to serve with the council, with the exception you said of the failure to appear, so.
Well, failure to appear happens
I'm
on
sorry,
Wednesday.
first appearance.
First appearance.
First appearance, so if someone has a first appearance and they can go ahead and get out, I mean, of course, I would like that.
Okay, and so I do want to give you this other tidbit. We pay Union City $250 a day, whether we use them for 10 minutes or $5. So I want to make sure that you're understanding the whole week. What we tried to do is in the schedule is to utilize our time that we pay for to the maximum extent. So that way, when we pay $250, I'm trying to take the whole mile, all 8 hours or whatever I'm entitled to. If we only use it for 10 minutes, I just want everybody to understand that we still have to pay them for the whole day.
Right, and I think it's worth $250 just to make sure people can get to the polls. So I would like to know what the council thinks
Could
about
you use for me?
Sure.
I think you hit it on the head when you started talking about $25 a day that we pay Union City. The other thing about it is our employees work that day. They don't get off. And so I think there's an impact beyond just the fact that I don't come to work, because our folk got to vote too. And your whole staff has to vote. So if your whole staff can find a way to vote, these folks who got these tickets can find a way to vote also. So I'm just concerned about the fiscal impact of what we're doing. I think it goes beyond $250. But I don't know what that is, Mr. Manager, until you let me know.
I mean, we can look into it. I think I would say that there are a lot of extenuating circumstances, definitely folks who are already kind of in jail and looking for a way out, you know, and they would do that through court that day. But I think there are also, other implications that happens with your tickets and, other activities of the court, even with us looking at potentially coordinating code enforcement. It would have an impact through not just allowing folks the ability to vote. And so I would have some concerns, but we can definitely look into it. But secondly, it is within the judge's authority to adjust her court schedule that day without the actions of counsel.
So I'll just say in conclusion, I will be pushing for election day to be a holiday for the entire city. It passed last year. I hope it will pass again this year. And I would just ask that even though we're not making the decision today, just be advised that might happen. What I don't want to happen is when we take that vote and then it becomes a holiday, we hear, oh, we didn't have enough time, or oh, we didn't know. So we're talking about it now in May, and I'll just make sure that we keep talking about it throughout the summer.
Oh, and that's fine. I just, I do want to make sure that everybody understands that, officers right now they're writing tickets in August.
Right.
So that's how far ahead we are.
Right.
So whenever you're making your decisions about scheduling, just kind of keep that date in mind that officers are now writing tickets in August. So I guess by August they're writing tickets in November. You understand what I'm saying?
Right.
So certainly if you pass something in December, then in September or in August, the implications now are greater than if you passed it today.
So maybe June, July, when we're making our budget, we're doing our calendar for the year.
I think Mr. Donald, that's the time.
Thank you.
Let's keep in mind that we still have early vote at that time. So if you got to be in court on the 20-something, we might want to vote early.
And we don't keep them there that long. Well, not all day.
Okay, this now happens to Baker.
Yes, first of all, I wanted to just say thank you for last week and the whole process. However, it was about 4 of us who weren't able to attend, and I think we had a question in reference to the allocation of funds. I know the city manager gave an answer, but I received a little bit, some of a different answer when we had our presentation. And if you could just share it for those of us who weren't here.
To answer to what specific
Reference
part?
to personnel for the court.
So, well,
Because I believe that the question that Ms. Councilwoman Gilliard asked was about the $100,000 for courts.
correct. So there is as the city manager indicated, there are a lot of things that were presented in the initial budget. First of all, I didn't have anything to do with the initial budget. I'm not certain to put it together, but it wasn't me. So there were a lot of things that were missing in that initial budget. For example, there was no line item for rental of buildings. There was no line item for jail facilities. The staffing was nowhere near where we needed to be. They only had one judge, one clerk. I mean, just things that we, in a city our size, we just can't function in that sort of way and maintain any sort of efficiency. And so what I've done since I've been on is do a lot of budget reallocations. Mr. Malazzi hates that, but I've had to move money around a lot to cover these kind of huge gaps that we have in the budget. And what I was afraid of is that because a lot of that money, all of the contractual fees and things of that nature, they weren't accounted for initially in the budget. And so while when you I'm not certain how you're calculating the budget. We don't see that kind of excess, but maybe there's excess, and you and I can certainly talk about that. But we don't see that kind of huge excess in our budget. But what we were afraid of is that come the end of the year, we won't have enough money to finish out the year. I mean, as we said, we pay Union City almost $3,000 a month right now because we pay them $250 a day. So things like that. We do need that other conflict defender that we need to hire. Running court 11 times a week, plus administrative responsibilities for me just being part-time is not sufficient. And so we certainly need to adjust for that. So there are some adjustments that we need to make. My hope was that working with the city manager and the finance team to put together a comprehensive requests for all of these individual things, so that you'll see that hopefully in our June meeting, we're working really diligently to have that, so that by the June meeting, you'll see it all put together. I have not officially reallocated anything because some of them require council approval, and so I'm going to present to you the total picture of where we're going to use that money and how we're going to use it so that you can see it. So none of the money has been spent. It just kind of exists out there in this bubble that we haven't reallocated, because we're going to bring that to you, but we're not going to do that to the June 5th meeting.
So right now, the vocal is the professional service.
Correct, yes, sir. Yes, sir, it is. Yes, sir, it is. Yes, sir.
Mr. Baker, you still have the floor.
Yes, thanks. With that being said, I believe through the presentation, the Cliff Notes version would be, this facility may not be as safe as we want it to be. Community court, I can attest to, is severely too small. And Union City, we have a gray area of somewhat of a political climate, temperature, not where we would want it to be. The only thing that I can say that I missed was, how say you, in regards to those three options, what did you, well, not what did you, because there wasn't one, and I don't know if you have one, but a recommendation from you as to how we should move forward, or how you would prefer.
So I'm definitely talking to the city manager about some additional options that just kind of exist out there right now. They're not kind of concrete, and so I don't think I necessarily have a timeline for you, and that's why I did not present those, because I can't tell you, by December, this is what it's going to look like. What I wanted to do is give you the total picture of where we are right now, and why we're utilizing all these spaces, because I understand that there was questions from the council, and understandably so, as to why we're still in Union City, why we're not moving. And so I wanted you to kind of see the whole landscape from the way that from my vantage point. But certainly I've expressed that to the city manager and the finance team, and I know that he is working diligently to secure some additional alternatives for the court facility, even if that's building and adding and all those things that are absolutely within his purview to do. And so hopefully, you know, I'm probably not a good person to talk about timeline as it relates to that. I'm certain that that's his.
And I think I'm not certain about the political ramifications for Union City, but we've met with them and had conversations, and so we're in a quality space there that kind of meets what we need for right now. And we've got, you know, we're looking at some things that we can do expansion-wise for some existing facilities that we have that could solve the problem in, I guess, the longer short term. So we're almost ready to bring those forward to the council. But while I've heard some issues around potentially using Union City, right now is one of our better options, and what we're looking at is what that secondary option for the time frame that doesn't work over there, what that is. And I think community court has filled some of those activities for us, and we're still looking at this facility as well.
Let me say to the Baker, I had a meeting made in there with Ms. Williams about several things. And one of the most important things was the use of the courtroom. There's nothing that they're doing right now or have the intention of doing to ask us to vacate that court facility. So they're all right. If that's what you want to do, I ain't trying to be for nobody. If that's what you want to do, the courtroom is going to be available.
Right. With that being said, the reason I mentioned it was because it was in the presentation.
Yes.
That was actually one of the reasons on the NAY side for the use of that facility. But I also would like to ask you, Mr. City Manager, I don't know where your scope is in reference to check-in, but look into or revisit the possibility of East Point, only because of what is happening right now, whereas we're we're detaining people there.
Can I jump in on that, on East Point? Only because I've checked into them. First of all, they have a full-time judge, and they utilize, their courtroom is probably, if not as small as here, it's between here and community court. So it's not the size, and I don't mean to cut you off, but I just want to make sure that you're understanding. I've actually been in East Point's courtroom. They use it a ton because it's so small, but I'm not certain that that's a viable option.
Right, and that's why, as I said, I don't know what the scope is.
Okay.
I can't say with certainty, but the thing is, we want to explore our possibilities. Given that we didn't have a recommendation, I just want to, you know, and we have to pay a certain amount of money to transport from East Point to wherever we're going to be. It's just something that should be at least explored or entertained. Yeah, yeah. So,
I know, are you finished?
No, yeah, go ahead.
Next is Ms. Rowell.
I was going to call on the previous question. Call on the previous question. Second.
We're voting on the motion to call for the previous question. Any discussion? Hold up.
I rescind that second.
Okay. Okay, that would bring up Ms. Gilliard.
I just want to know, when we were looking for space, Fulton County wanted to sort of charge a little bit more, but you weren't here then. So do you think that there is a possibility that you could go back to them and have a discussion with them about their rate and perhaps us working something out?
So we've actually met with Fulton County, I guess we'll call them the administrative side of Fulton County, as well as the DA's office, and we've met with Union City, and we've had some conversations with East Point, and we're talking to other people as well. So we are thoroughly vetting this process, and I think we have talked to Fulton County and gotten them to commit to reducing their price. But there's also some things that they would have to do to make the place more safe for us, and so they're looking into that as well. So we have not, I think that's why the judge mentioned that she didn't make a recommendation, because we're having, I think basically every week we've had some type of conversation with a different faction. And we're also looking at internal options as well, because we do have a facility that we can potentially expand. So we're looking at everything.
I think also, Mr. Gilliard, there's some aesthetic things that has to be done in that courtroom facility. Okay. Is there a motion to approve?
Is this the motion to approve the second reading of the municipal court schedule?
Although,
I rescinded it.
Previous.
So she could talk.
all right, all those in favor? That passes unanimously. Ms. Clerk?
The next item is reappropriation of funds for the Older Americans Board activities.
Any discussions? Entertaining discussion? Whatever. Right.
Oh, we just talked about
I'm a little, let me tell you, I'm a little bit confused on this, and Ms. Gunn said the same thing. There's no backup documentation on this.
I thought it was full.
I mean, what are we doing? Are we asking for?
I have not been provided documentation. I did not add this item to the agenda, so I don't have the answers that you're looking for. But if you do want to discuss this, then someone would need to make a motion to do X, Y, Z, and then you could discuss that.
Well, the item came to my office, and because of the fact that this is Thursday, you know, I thought it was an emergency type deal to put it on because the deal was Thursday. But I've seen no follow-up documentation or anything. What, does anybody know?
You can rescind it. I don't know why it's here, so I don't want to tell you, you know.
It was my understanding that this was pulled, this resolution that was placed on the agenda was pulled from the council person that was sponsoring the resolution. Was that not correct?
I have not seen a resolution.
Can I say?
Mr. Massey?
Okay, I would have to defer to Councilman Khalid. He's the one who requested the items and a number of items, and we took them to the mayor, who approved for it to be placed on today's agenda.
Would you yield to?
I'm gonna yield to Ms. Jackson.
Okay.
I know you all know.
And Ms. Jackson called Mr. Massey and asked him to remove it, and you said that we would just not have to discuss it or something?
Oh, definitely. I did indicate that you all could, as a body, remove anything.
Yeah, remove it off the
from the
agenda.
agenda.
So it's removed, so it's not in the packet, so we don't need to discuss.
And once
It's not
made
in
a
the packet
motion.
anyway.
Okay.
I'd like to make a motion to remove the item.
Second.
Probably move the second in discussion. All those in favor? That passes unanimously. I think I'll accept the motion to adjourn.
I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
Probably move the second to adjourn.